Lorinda Swain has lived a parent's worst nightmare.
I'd rather be accused of killing my parents than to be accused of molesting your adopted son. It's just so sick, you know?
Shocked when cops entered her Lansing, Michigan home and placed her under arrest for sexually abusing her adopted son.
When they first told me that Ronnie accused me of this, I told him, I don't believe my kid said that. And the guy said, well, I witnessed him saying you did it.
It was a scenario 13-year-old Ronnie and his younger brother Cody cooked up. The older boy telling police Lorinda abused him on a daily basis, starting when Ronnie was 7 years old.
The story that they came up with is that I would wake both children up, dress them both, and then I would supposedly send Cody out to wait for a bus by himself, and then I would molest Ronnie.
Hearing that her eldest son made such disgusting accusations shook Lorinda to the core. Lorinda adored her sons, whom she adopted when they were babies.
Every day I loved them and they brought me joy. I wanted kids so badly.
But life wasn't always easy. Lorinda served several months in prison on a drug charge. Despite her problems, she tried her best to provide a stable environment.
They had food and love and toys, and they were very spoiled and very loved, and they knew it.
So why would Ronnie, a boy who was so loved by his mom, say he was abused by her? Turns out the 13-year-old made the accusations while Lorinda was in prison, and the boys were staying with their dad. The story is layered with accusations. One day, Ronnie's stepmother confronted him, claiming a young female relative told her Ronnie had molested her. Ronnie, terrified of getting in trouble, made up the story about his mom.
If I hadn't have used drugs, I wouldn't have ended up in these shoes, most likely, because my son wouldn't have been over at my ex-husband's house. He wouldn't have molested the little girl.
Lorinda would only learn much later the accusations against Ronnie were true. But just a few days after returning home from prison, police entered her home and made the arrest, charging her with 4 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct based on Ronnie's story.
I thought my nightmare was over, and I got home, and 2 days later, I found out I had no idea what a nightmare was.
Lorinda found herself back in prison, facing trial. But just before appearing in a courtroom, Ronnie made a shocking admission while spending a night with Lorinda's parents.
My dad had a tape and asked him, and he told the truth that, Mom didn't do anything.
But the tape confession wouldn't save Lorinda. On the witness stand, Ronnie burst into tears. The truth never came out.
The reason he's crying is because he feels so guilty for saying such a terrible lie, but to the 12 strangers, they thought probably he was crying because he really had been molested.
The jury convicted Lorinda on all charges. She was sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison.
I don't know how I've made it through. I really don't, but somehow I did. I am innocent.
2 years after the trial, their mom still sitting in prison, Ronnie recanted his story, even writing a letter admitting he lied, but was told his admission came too late. Then a much-needed ray of hope with the help of the Michigan Innocence Project.
Lorinda's case was certainly one of our more difficult cases.
A judge ruled Lorinda deserved a new trial. The case dragged on for years, ultimately heading to the state Supreme Court. Prosecutors decided to drop all charges against Lorinda Swain.
It's unbelievable to me now that it got over with that quickly after the Supreme Court hearing. There's just no way to describe it.
It's been over a decade since that horrible day. Incredibly, Lorinda says she forgives her boys, but admits there's a bitter residue that won't go away.
It's not going to ever be like it would have been had this never occurred, but I do love them. I do forgive them.